What's going on, everyone? So I made a video a while back diving into the potential of Victor and Tabitha being brother and sister, and that Tabitha could potentially be Eloise. We have no idea what happened to her after the events. We know that his mother died, that Miranda had died, but we don't know what happened to Eloise. If she got out, is she still living in FROMVILLE somewhere in a different area? Like, the sky's the limit when it comes to potential for Eloise. Until we actually get a resolved answer, any theory is a good theory at this point. But in that previous video, I gave evidence and things that kind of allude to the potential. Now, obviously, it's a theory until we have confirmation one way or the other. But I did think that there were some interesting elements that I touched on in that previous video. But after watching the recent episode of From in Season 3, Episode 3, I think that there is even more evidence that we need to cover and go into that I think is even more compelling than the previous evidence that I relayed. And I wanted to take a little time to allow people to kind of catch up and see that previous episode before I dived into a continued video. But let's get into it now. So again, Tabitha and Victor potentially being related. A lot of people signal to Tabitha, oh, well, she's Hispanic, right? She has the accent, but Tabitha was very young. She was little, and we don't know what the effects are after Eloise had potentially gotten out. Now, we know what happened to Tabitha when she got out, and they found her on the side of the road, or the side of a walking path, or a path, right? But if Eloise got out, one, we don't know how she got out. Two, we don't know what effects it had on her. It's very possible she could have had amnesia or just didn't really remember much, if anything. And because you would think if Eloise got out, she would have went immediately to her father or would have relayed like, hey, I'm Eloise and my father is Henry and my mother is Miranda, and would have kind of relayed like, hey, this is where I'm at. And they would have relocated her to her father. Now, if she didn't know and she had no clue, you got to think this was 30 plus years ago, right? So the likelihood of her finding her father or her mother or anything is very slim, depending on where she ended up, right? So that in and of itself could be something. And then she gets adopted by a Hispanic family. She learns the tongue. She learns the language, right? You look at her and Jim's kids, they don't look, Julie and Ethan, they don't look very Hispanic. Now, look, a lot of people don't. I'm actually Mexican, and I look as white as they come. Blonde hair, blue eyes, you name it. But they also don't really, we haven't seen them speak Spanish. We haven't seen them relay Spanish or even have an accent. Now, Jim clearly isn't he doesn't look to be Hispanic, so that could be an easy explanation. Again, there's little kind of breadcrumbs, but we're looking for the whole cake here. Now, a big thing that happened in the previous episode was the bracelet. Now, this is a bracelet that she had made for Jim that Tabitha discovered in the glove box of Henry's car. And Henry says that, hey, that's something that Miranda made. She was adamant that, once again, this was her bracelet, that this was the one that she made because of the errors on the bracelet. And that actually kind of caused her to kind of spiral a little bit and believe that she was still in FROMVILLE. And then that led to the car accident in which now she is actually in FROMVILLE, which I think is a funny sequence and event. But now we have this bracelet that is tied to Miranda as well as Tabitha, that Tabitha made hers years before she actually ended up in FROMVILLE, and then she found that same bracelet in FROMVILLE in a little storage area down in the basement, right? And talked about it, and even Jim was kind of like, oh, that's interesting, you found this bracelet that's similar to the one I made. And she said no. Well, now we know it's probably Miranda's. It's probably Miranda's bracelet, but that in and of itself can potentially be a connection. Because if you say Tabitha creating these bracelets, and they are so similar to Miranda's to the point where Tabitha can't even recognize the difference, right? She likely learned that somewhere. Now, it is a simple handmade bracelet, and maybe, the chances are that multiple people have made similar bracelets, but no, Tabitha believes that it's the exact same bracelet. So unless this bracelet has time traveling powers and is able to fade in and out of everywhere, which is a possibility, but Henry recognized the bracelet. Henry knew about the bracelet. So it wasn't something that where he was like, I have no idea where that came from, right? No, he was like, oh, that's, a bracelet, that type of bracelet Miranda used to make. And so you have the bracelet connection where it would make sense that if Eloise, right, was to be Tabitha, that she would have similar art and similar bracelets and stuff like that as to her mother, right? You look at the paintings in which Miranda created, right? Those paintings were very similar to the type of paintings that Eloise created, which is why a lot of people thought maybe they were Eloise's drawings because of the way that they were drawn. But then you find out it is Miranda's, and it's like, okay, well, now that makes sense. That's where Eloise got her drawing style from, was from her mother. Well, if Tabitha is still the mother, or is the daughter to the mother, then she would have a similar concept. And even if, you're looking at it as okay, I can buy the adoption part, right? Maybe that explains why she has the Hispanic accent. Also, keep in mind, we have no idea what Miranda was. Miranda, it could very well be Hispanic, right? Isn't that a Hispanic name, if I'm not mistaken, right? So I've met several Hispanic girls that are named Miranda. So that in and of itself is a clue that maybe she is Hispanic, right? We have no idea what ethnicity, because we've only seen Miranda in brief dark cellars, right? So we don't know what she is, if there is any tie. But now you have the connection to the bracelet, right? On top of the connection to the bracelet, you also have that was relayed through Henry, a song playing in the car. And Henry, the tape is stuck in the car, and Tabitha kind of takes some interest to the tape that's in the car, and Henry relays that, oh, this was mine and Miranda's song, and the song is titled Blue. And Tabitha says that's very interesting because that's mine and Jim's song. So Tabitha and Jim's couple song is the exact same song as Miranda and Henry. And then on top of that, you have Tabitha creating the same bracelet as Miranda. Those aren't either these are crazy coincidences or they're not coincidences, they are connections. And if she had a mother that she picks up from, now, even if she was adopted, even if she had amnesia, even in the real world, plenty of cases of people having kind of leaked memories, right? Look at Victor, for example, right? Victor himself completely blocked out and had amnesia. He didn't even remember he had a sister. And he was able to remember. He had little fragments of things kind of come to him. Certain things that he remembered his mother saying and all that stuff, right? It's very similar. It's very possible that Tabitha could have had a similar thing where even though she grew up with a different mother and stuff like that, she may have had kind of remembrance of things she learned from Miranda. And a song that she fell in love with would have unlocked due to her memories of her father and her mother playing the song Blue. So now you have a bracelet, you have a song that have a connection. Henry also, on several occasions, and if you don't agree with this, I encourage you to go back and watch the entire season, because it's happened in, or at least all the episodes where Henry's been in, right? Which is basically the entire season, right? But more so episode 2 and 3. Go back and watch those episodes if you disagree with this. There have been several instances where Henry has relayed something to Tabitha or has posed a question or shown Tabitha the room, right? And it was posed as if he was curious to see her response. Go watch his facial expressions and the way he goes about himself during certain exchanges with Tabitha. Even the room, it was almost like Henry was trying to unlock a memory of Tabitha. Henry finds out that his son is alive, his wife is dead, and not once we've heard about Eloise. He hasn't once asked about, hey, where's my daughter? Is my daughter alive? Is my daughter dead? Even when they first had their encounters and he found out about Victor, he didn't once go, well, what about my daughter? What about Eloise? Right? Like, nothing. And yet, what? You're telling me that he just doesn't care? He doesn't remember his daughter? Like, what is it? So you have, at what point do coincidences stop being coincidences and start being evidence that this is really the case? Again, maybe it's not. Maybe this is intently designed to fool us and have us believe that this is the case. That's a very real possibility, right? It is very possible that they are simply just trying to lead us down this path to have us believe something else. But I don't think it's that far-fetched, right? Now, another big point that people bring up that I've seen outside of like the, she's Hispanic or, like how, like even if she was adopted, how would she? Okay, well, another big thing is people talk about the age discrepancy, right? Tabitha looks so much younger than Victor, and that Victor, that he was older, but only slightly. Well, you also have to keep in mind that when you're talking about Tabitha and Victor, Victor grew up in FROMVILLE. How would you age better in the real world or in a place where monsters exist and every waking moment or every time you try to go to sleep or anything, you run the risk of death? If Victor grew up in FROMVILLE, if they both grew up in FROMVILLE and, he just looks so much old, then yeah, I could understand. Like, that's probably not Eloise. But it would make even more sense that Victor would look older because he grew up in this form of hell, right? Like, and Tabitha grew up very likely, it seems like, with a nice family, with a mother that cares, with a mother that loves her. And she probably didn't have crazy obstacles and stuff in her life. She probably wasn't fear for her life 24/7, 365 like Victor was as a little kid. So even that in and of itself, right? And so, all of the kind of like questions as to, oh, well, this doesn't make sense are all relatively explainable, right? Again, Tabitha, the Hispanic accent and language and stuff very likely would have gotten picked up. That kid. There are adults that go abroad. I know people, I've gotten a lot of comments in the previous video because a lot of people push back of like, well, she wouldn't have gained that. That's not true. I know people personally that have gone abroad or have moved to, a different, from like the Midwest or something. And then all of a sudden pick up like the little twang, right? You don't talk to them for a few months and then all of a sudden you start having that twang. And another thing that people I've seen bring up is that, well, wouldn't Henry remember his daughter? Well, one, he hasn't seen his daughter in 30 plus years. Two, this woman shows up on the doorstep and she's speaking and she has an accent, right? I don't know if you have, but I've had family members that I've seen, regularly as kids, and then they end up moving, and we don't see them again for till the holiday or something, and I hadn't seen them in 7 years, 5 years, whatever. And all of a sudden you look and you're like, man, I wouldn't even recognize you if I saw you walking down the street. I wouldn't even recognize that you were my family member, right? I've had friends that I had when I was kids growing up and ran into them as adults and been like, man, I didn't even recognize, you kind of have that look like, oh, is that really him? Oh, it is. Right? But that's my point with, if you watch how Henry talks and relays things to her at times, it's almost like he's trying to gauge if it really is her, right? It's like, have you ever ran into somebody that you feel like you know, and then you bring up like, like, oh man, last year I went to this, whatever. I went to this club and, this guy was playing, and they go, oh, I was there. And you go, oh, okay, yeah, like, that's where I know you from. Remember we had this, and then you start that conversation. You're trying to kind of throw stuff out to see if it's the person you think it is. That's kind of what Henry seems like he does at times. Like, even showing the room feels like, what's the point? Why? You just met this lady. You don't know if she's real or not. You're kind of questioning. Even when he shows the basement, he's kind of, but, why not show, why show and go into the room and do, this is where Victor lived. This is where my daughter lived, right? Like, this is the room for both of them. It's just, the stranger that you're on the fence about, you're just showing your house, giving a house tour. I can understand after he has it. Like, when he woke up and she came out of the basement, he was like, oh, you've been in the basement all day? If after he showed that or right before but he's still on the fence and thinks she's crazy. And it's like he's trying to poke and prod to see if she remembers or if it's really her. Henry it's almost like he seems to know that it's him. And then even his reaction, right? She finds the bracelet and she starts kind of losing it a little bit. And she goes to try to leave, and Henry reacts. Now, he reacted and said, you can't just drop this on me and then bail out now. But it was just such an overreact. It was such a crazy react. Such an overreact. He puts one on the guy, and it leads to the car wreck. And it's just like, if that was your daughter and you hadn't seen her, or if you believed that was your daughter and you hadn't seen her in 30 plus years, that would make sense for that type of that overreaction. I understand he has this, hey, my son's alive. I know he's alive, which again, he didn't mention the daughter. I understand that you're going to want to have this, but why not let things cool off, maybe get out of the car and try to talk to her and just hey, yeah, you can get out of the car. It was like he was trying to keep her. It was like he was trying, I can't, I let you go once. I can't let you go again. Now, look, that could very well be an overanalyzation. I'll give you that. But all the other things that I've highlighted, all the other things that how many coincidences do you need before it's all right, maybe there's really something here? I mean, the song and the bracelet, I think, are two of the biggest, whoa, yeah, moments. But as always, this is a discussion, and I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? How do you agree with my points? Do you disagree with my points? Are you kind of in the middle? Now, do you believe that, yeah, like I said, after episode 3, go watch episode 3 again. Even if you've already seen it, come back to this video and tell me you're not more confident, right? I got done with episode 3 and I was like, man, I should have waited on that last video. Should have waited on that video. We just got a bunch of more stuff that I could add to that. So here it is, the follow-up. But anyway, again, however you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. So we enjoy these types of videos and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.